I'm Drake Menning, and this is my video reaction number 2. I found what the speaker Bill Black had to say was very interesting and thought-provoking. Although I do not agree that it is necessarily a true statement that blacks are or more likely to be criminals, I do agree that unfortunately it is the thought among many people, including some law enforcement. I find it somewhat shocking that actual police officers would say that they arrest blacks because blacks commit more crimes. I think sometimes it also depends on the area, and there may just be more of a black population in a certain area, so in that area more blacks would commit more crimes, but perhaps it is not a true overall statement. I find it interesting, but not all that surprising, that white-collar crimes are not really counted or put in statistics. It would seem that the blue-collar crimes are what are called in and reported to police, so that may be where statistics come from. I also think that maybe people don't think of white-collar crimes as being harmful or in the same class as blue-collar crime. I never really thought about white-collar crimes being so harmful to so many people, but I do now see how that can be true. It was interesting to hear that white-collar crimes are more numerous and create more dollar loss than blue-collar crimes, with white-collar crimes often being committed by business people who have the power to keep it from being on the news or reported as a statistic. We probably don't hear about them nearly as often as they are committed. He says that people think white-collar crime doesn't do direct harm because it isn't violent, but that it's actually more violent because of what it does to people. I agree that it does make sense that a large-scale business crime would hurt or kill more people than a single blue-collar crime. While a CEO may not necessarily have the intent to harm or kill people, they are willing to commit the fraud that leads to this, simply to make money for their company. If one large-scale white-collar crime, such as those involving airbags, pollution, or building materials, have killed or injured hundreds or thousands each, and a single blue-collar homicide killed one person, the white-collar crime is actually much more harmful, regardless of the intent, although neither is right and both are crimes. It is interesting to think about the differences in blue-collar crime and white-collar crime. He stated that people usually think of crimes being committed more by blacks or Latinos, but this is only the blue-collar crimes that have been reported. I think this is why we have such stereotypes about criminals, because we only think about blue-collar crimes, and society has the stereotype of blacks and Latinos committing those crimes more often than whites. But the video stated that the small amount of crimes actually reported don't include the white-collar crimes, and that in the U.S., white-collar crimes are mostly committed by whites. If this is true, that would mean more whites actually commit crimes overall than the blacks and Latinos, and that the stereotype of a criminal in general is not at all what most people may think. While a 50-year-old white businessman may not be the stereotypical person to commit a violent crime, they may be the stereotypical person to commit a white-collar crime. He says that we have created a culture where police actually look more for young blacks and Latinos and target them for crimes and tend to escalate the situation with them, and often shoot more so than they would with a white person. I feel that in some areas of the country this may be true, and as Bill Black stated, the NYPD admitted they target mostly blacks, but for the most part, I feel that especially lately, law enforcement does not target blacks or Latinos, but most people try not to stereotype, and with all the media about officers shooting supposedly innocent blacks lately, and the Black Lives Matter issues coming out, that officers think more about who they go after and make sure it is actually someone committed a crime, and they want to get it right. He says that street crime is characterized as black crime, but according to statistics isn't necessarily true across the country, which I tend to agree with overall across the country. Being a white male, I feel that maybe I am not so much of a target or suspect of a violent or blue-collar crime. But it would be hard to be a young black male and have police looking at me in a different way and thinking of me as a criminal when I have done nothing wrong. However, as I become a white male in the business world, I would be in the demographic which is who supposedly commits the most white-collar crimes. But I still do not feel I would be targeted, because unfortunately our society does not see this demographic as criminals. Even though I will be in the business world, I feel this needs to be looked at closer, and law enforcement needs to realize the extent and severity of white-collar crimes and begin to look at white-collar criminals in the same way they do blue-collar criminals. As far as the impact on business law, I think businesses need to be held more accountable. I think white-collar crime needs to be investigated more and looked at more seriously as a crime, with statistics being counted and looked at along with blue-collar crimes and the white-collar criminals being targeted too. White-collar crime should be looked at more closely, and we should recognize that anyone can be a criminal regardless of age, race, or social status. The stereotype of a criminal needs to change, or better yet, there needs to be no stereotype, and law enforcement needs to watch for all unlawful conduct from all people, whether it is blue-collar or white-collar. There are many laws already in place stating the proper ways to conduct business, but unfortunately, I feel there may not always be enforced as well as they should, and fraud can be committed easier than what should be allowed. Sometimes, sadly, because no one is looking at a white man as a criminal. More laws need to be in place for companies to have to be accountable for the products they are producing and for proper testing to be done to make sure what is being sold is safe for all consumers. If I were to manage a business, I would make sure that everyone in my organization was aware of white-collar crimes and how serious they are, and the consequences, and make sure we work to proper standards to have no fraudulent activity. As an accountant, I will be observant in my work and have others double-check my work so that I am held accountable and never put in a position where a fraud could be committed or that I would be accused of a fraud. I feel if all businesses use better safeguards and have more steps of accountability, less white-collar crime would be able to occur.